Hello, welcome back to the True Crime Lounge podcast. My name is Breezy, and today we are continuing on our five-part mini-series on the frustrating case of Madeleine McCann. I call it a very frustrating case because this case is so frustrating to me. Like, this is one of the harder cases for me to talk about, but at the same time, it is also one of the cases that, I want to know answers to. I have to have some answers to this case. Yeah. But we're going to continue on. If you're new here, hit that like button, ring that bell for notification. Please subscribe. Also, all mini-series episodes will be coming out at the same time. Um, I so you can watch all of it. You don't have to wait weeks and weeks. I am trying to focus more. My Just a Breezy Chat podcast is coming to an end, but I also have a new podcast I'm going to be working on as well. So you'll have to bear with me. I also work, so please bear with me, like I said. But let's start off with the British DNA analysis, shall we? So, there were some hair and other fibers that were collected from the areas of the car in apartment 5A where Keela and Eddie were given off alerts, and they were seen in forensic science service in Birmingham for DNA profiling, arriving around August 8, 2007. And at the time, according to the Sunday Times, the PJ abandoned the abduction theory, and on August 8 was without waiting for the results from the Birmingham Portuguese police called the McCann's family for a meeting in Portimao, where Gallermino um, in Corseo. I apologize if I'm butchering that name up. I am terrible with names. But director and Louis Neves, who was the coordinator there and at the office in Lisbon, told him that the case was now a murder inquiry. And when Encarno died of stomach cancer in 2010, the Daily Telegraph identified him as a major source of the leaks against the McCanns. Both the McCanns were interrogated that day, and the officer suggested Kate's memory was faulty. And the FFS used the technique known as low copy number (LCN) testing and used when only a few cells were which are available. And the test is controversial because it is vulnerable to the contamination and misinterpretation. And on September 3rd, John Lowe of the FSS emailed Detective Superintendent Stuart Pryor of the Leicestershire Police and the liaison officer between the British and the Portuguese authorities. And Lowe told Pryor that a sample from the car boot contained 15 out of 19 of Madeleine's DNA components. And this was the result that was too complex for a meaningful interpretation. A complex LCN and DNA results were appear to have been originated at least 3 people who obtained from cellular material and from the luggage compartment and section with the DNA profile of Madeleine McCann, and 20 DNA components, which are represented by 19 peaks on the chart. And of these 19, 15 are present within the lab from the item. Now, there are 37 components in total. And there are 37 components because they're all at least 3 contributors. But there could be up to 5. In my opinion, therefore the results is too complex and meaningful for interpretation and everything. Now, the McCanns are once again made suspects. And Lowe's email was translated into Portuguese on September 4th, 2007. And the next day, according to Kate, the PJs proposed that if she were to admit that Madeleine had died in the accident in the apartment, that she had hidden the body, that she might only serve a 2-year sentence. Now, her husband would not be charged and would be free to leave. Now, both parents were given the suspect status on September 7th, and then they were advised by their lawyers not to answer questions. And the PJ told Jerry that Madeleine's DNA had been found in the car suspect behind the sofa apartment in 5A. Now, Jerry did not respond to the questions, but Kate declined to reply to 48 hours for which she was asked during an 11-hour interview. Now, the DNA evidence was a 100% match, and the British tabloids claims Horace in the McCann car. and everything. And while the Daily Star reported that there was a clump of Maddie's hair had been found in the car, the leaks came directly from the Portuguese police, according to testimony in 2012 from Jerry Lawton and the Daily Star reporter in the Levinson Inquiry. Now, Matt Baggett of the Leicestershire Police told the inquiry that because the Portuguese were in the charge of the case, he had made a decision not to correct reporters. But his fourth priority, he said, was to maintain a good relationship with the PJ with a view of finding Madeleine. Now, they would have returned to the UK, and despite their suspect status, they were allowed to leave Portugal, and on legal advice, did so immediately, arriving back in England September 9, 2007. The following day, Chief Inspector Tarbris de Almada of the PJ in Portimao signed a 9-page report concluding that Madeleine had died in the apartment at 5A. As a result of the accident, that the restaurant meal and the apparent regular checks on the McCann children had been part of a cover-up, and that the Tappas 7 had not helped mislead the police. And the McCanns had concealed the child's body before faking an abduction in an 11-page document from the IAB and Lipsman analysis alleged that discrepancies in the McCann statement. And on September 11th, the public prosecutor Jose Conja I'm not attempting to pronounce the rest of that. I barely speak good English as it is, so my Portuguese is probably terrible at this point. And what language does Portugal speak? I won't say Portuguese, but anyway, handed the 10-volume case to the judge, Pedro Miguel de Anjos Frias, and he applied for the seizure of Kate's diary and Jerry's laptop. And the police also wanted to trace telephones calls between the McCanns and the Tappas 7 and their views of the report and the suitcases and everything. Now on September 28, 2007, according to the leaked diplomatic cable, the U.S. Ambassador of Portugal, Al Hoffman, wrote a letter saying that he had been with the British ambassador in Portugal, Alexander Ellis, September 21, 2007. And what in the cable would say, without delving into the details of the case, Ellis admitted that the British police had developed current evidence against the McCann parents, and he stressed the authorities from both countries would be working. Now, Control Risk was a British security company, and they would take hair samples from the McCann twins on September 24th, 2007 at the parents' request, and the twins had slept through the commotion at the apartment, and that Madeleine was reported missing, and Kate wrote that she was so concerned that the abductor might have given the children sedatives. And according to the PJ files, Kate had asked them for samples 3 months after her disappearance, but they had not done so. And Control Risk took a sample from Kate too, to rebut allegations and take off and tell she was on medication, but no trace of drugs was ever in her system. Now, on October 2nd, 2007, Chief Inspector Gonzalo Amaro was removed from his post in inquiries coordinator and transferred to Faro after telling the newspaper that British police had only pursued details helpful to the McCanns. As an example, he criticized their decision to follow up with an anonymous email to Prince Charles that claimed former Ocean Club employee had taken Madeleine. And Amaro himself was one day after Madeleine's disappearance, and in relation to the investigation for another case, was the disappearance of Joanna Capriano. In the following month, he was charged with making a false statement, and 4 other officers were charged with assault. Now, 8-year-old Joanna had vanished in 2004 from Figueroa, 7 miles from Praia de Luz, and her body was never found. There were no murder weapons identified, and Joanna's mom and uncle were convicted of murder after confessing, but the mother retracted her confession, saying that she had lied and had been beaten by the police, and Amaro was not present when the beating was alleged to have taken place, but he was accused of having covered up for others. Now, the Other detectives were acquitted, and Amaro was convicted of perjury in May 2009 and received an 18-month suspended sentence. Now, the McCann inquiry was taken by Paulo Rebello, Deputy National Director of the PJ, which expanded his team of detectives and began a case review. And on November 29, 2007, four members of the Portuguese inquiry, including Francisco Corte Real, the Vice President of Portugal's Forensics Crime Service, was buried at Leicestershire Police Headquarters by FSS. In April 2008, the TAPIS 7 was interviewed in England by the Leicestershire Police with the PJs in attendance. Now, the PJ planned in December 2007 to hold a reconstruction in Praia da Luz using the McCanns and TAPIS 7 rather than actors, but the TAPIS 7 declined to participate, and the poor relationship between the McCanns and the Portuguese police officer were evident again in that month when, and on the day, the couple were at the European Parliament to promote monitoring system for missing children. Transcripts of their interviews with the PJ were leaked to Spanish television, and the national director of the PJs resigned not long after this, citing media pressure, and he had publicly said that the media had hastily in naming the McCanns as suspect. And as of May 2008, the Portuguese prosecutors were examining several charges against the McCanns, including child abandonment, abduction, homicide, and concealment of a corpse. Now, on July 21st, 2008, the Portuguese Attorney General Fernando Jose Pinta Monteiro announced that this was no evidence to be linked to the McCanns and everything, and that Madeleine's disappearance. Now, their suspect status was lifted and the case was closed. Now, on August 4th, there was a statement released containing over 11,000 pages of CD-ROMs to the media, including 2,500 pages of sightings, and the files were including a 58 prosecutor's report, which concluded no element of proof whatsoever was found, which allows any formal, lucid, sensible, serious, honest conclusion about the circumstances. Okay, I am back. I recorded half this episode last night, so I'm doing another half this morning, so I can finish up with this series. So the inquiry will close in July 2008. In 2009, Portugal released for the 2,000 pages. Days after the case closed, excerpts from Kate's diary, which had been taken by the PJ in August 2007, that were published in translation by a Portuguese tabloid. And despite the Portuguese judge ruling in June 2008 that the seizure, there you go, that looks more uniform. Anyway, actually that looks more better, actually. I'm not gonna lie on that one. We'll get that little clump later. But anyway, seizure had been a privacy violation. Any copies must be destroyed. And on September 14, 2008, a News International tabloid, News of the World, would publish the extracts again without permission, and again, and now improperly translated back to English. So, what about Amaral's book? Well, the lingering tension, um, the lingering tension between the McCanns and the PJs had reached such a height that Amaro resigned from the force in June 2008 to write a book alleging that Madeleine had died in an accident in the apartment, and to cover it up, the McCanns had faked an abduction. 3 days after the case closed, Amaro's book, Maddie, The Truth of the Lie, was published in Portugal by Goria and Paz. Now, By November 2008, it has sold 180,000 copies, and by 2010, it had been translated into 6 languages. A documentary was based on the book and broadcast in Portugal in April 2009 and was watched by many viewers. Now, the McCanns began a libel action against Amaral and was in his publishers and Madeleine's fund and covered the legal fees. And they were awarded 600,000 euros in libel damage. And Amaral appealed against the decision, succeeding in 2016, and a judge had issued an injunction against further publications of sales of the book 2009. But the Lisbon Court of Appeal overturned the ban in 2010, stating that it violated Omar's freedom of expression, and the ban was reinstated in 2015 as part of a libel ruling. Now, this also lifted when Omar's appeal succeeded in 2016. The McCanns appealed in the 2016 decision to Portugal's Supreme Court, but the court ruled against them in February 2017. It was in their 76-page ruling that the judges wrote that the McCanns had not, in fact, cleared the archiving of the criminal case in 2008. In March 2017, the Supreme Court rejected the McCann's final appeal. So, what about Madeleine's fund inquiry? Well, the McCanns was at Madeleine's fund, leaving no stone unturned. On May 15, 2007, just 12 days after the disappearance, and over 80 million people would visit the fund's website in the 3 months of the disappearance. Now, from September 2007, Brian Kennedy of Everest Windows would support the couples financially, and the Kennedy lawyer joined the fund board of directors. In as 2017, it has 7 directors, including the McCanns. And appeals by public figures or screened at football matches across the UK. In between May 2007 and May 2008, the fund received um, over 1 million euros, including 1.4 million through the bank, 390,000 euros and 64,000 euros from merchandise. Now, during donations include 250,000 euros from News of the World, um, 250,000 euros from Sir Philip Green, $50,000 from Simon Cowell, and $25,000 from Colin Rooney. J.K. Rowling and Richard Branson also made large donations. Branson donated 100,000 euros to the McCanns. Legal fund. Now, Madeleine Madeleine's fund did not cover the couple's legal fees arising from the status of suspect, but it was criticized in October 2007 for having made the two of the McCann's mortgage payments before made suspects, and after 2.5 million euros was offered, including from News of the World, and everything. Now, in March 2008, Express newspapers paid to fund 550,000 euros, 375,000 euros in libel damage, arising from the articles about the McCanns and the Tapas 7, respectively. And in 2007, Kate McCann's book Madeleine was serialized by the Sunday Times, and the book was owned by News National for a payment fund of 500,000 euros to 1 million euros. In December 2015, the fund stood about 750,000 euros. Now, what about private investigators? Well, sorry, y'all. I had to get that in my system real quick. If I don't go so long without eating, I get really sick to the stomach, so please bear with me. But Malice Fund has several firms, PIs, including causing friction in Portuguese police. Now, shortly after the disappearance, an anonymous home factor paid for the services of British security company Control Risk, and it had been reported that 4 independent sightings from North Africa, Brian Kennedy went to Morocco himself in September 27 to look into one. Now, a Norwegian woman had reported seeing a little girl matching Madeleine's description in a patrol station in Marrakech, Morocco on May 9, 2007. And the child had reportedly asked the man, she was English, and he said, can we see mommy soon? With the witnesses returned home to Spain, and she learned about her disappearance and telephoned the Spanish police. A month later, according to the Portuguese, the police had not formally interviewed the woman, which led to McCann's to fear the leads were not being pursued. And the McCanns themselves traveled to Morocco on June 10, 2007 to raise awareness. Now, they even spent the night in the British ambassador's residence and were briefed by consular staff in the Metro Police attached. Now, Kennedy hired a Spanish agency, Metro 3, for 6 months of 150,000 of 50,000 euros a month, which would put 35 investigators in the case of Europe and Morocco. Now, the relationship came to an end because the agency made several statements that concerned the McCanns, including the CBS statement that we know the kidnapper, we know who he has and how he's done it. And another PI was David Egger, a retired detective inspector, and in 2009, a recommendation in the head of the Manchester Serious Crime Squad. And Egger released a e-fit in August of that year about a woman said that she asked 2 British men in Barcelona shortly after the disappearance whether they were there to deliver how her case and the PI and everything. Now, in 2008, Madeleine's fund hired Oakley International, a Washington, D.C. registered detective agency, for 500,000 euros. And Oakley was sent a 5-man team to Portugal led by Henry Exton, who was a former British police officer and who had worked for the MI5. And the Oakley team engaged in the undercover operations within the Ocean Club and among pedophile rings in the Roma community. Now, Exton questioned the significance of the Tanner sighting and focused instead on the sighting of Martin and Mary Smith, of a man carrying a child toward a beach, and the Oakley team produced an e-fit based on the description. And this was a sensitive issue because Martin had recently watched BBC coverage of Madeleine McCann's arrival in the UK from Portugal. The McCann's arrival in the UK from Portugal at the height of the public debate about their alleged involvement. As Jerry exited the aircraft, with his son in his arms, Smith believed that he recognized him as the man he had seen carrying the child in Praia de Luz, and he reported his suspicion to the Leicestershire police, but later came to accept that he was mistaken. And at 10 o'clock, a witness placed Jerry at the Tapas restaurant. Nevertheless, publications of the Smith e-fits, which bore a resemblance to Jerry, would have fed to conspiracy theories to the McCanns. Now, Exxon submitted his reports to Madeleine's fund in 2008 and suggested releasing the e-fits, but the funds told Exxon that the report and its e-fits will remain confidential, and the relationship between the company and the fund had soured, in part because of this dispute over fees, and part because it was reported that critical of the McCanns and their friends, and it suggested that Madeleine may have died in an accident after letting herself out of the apartment through its unlocked door. Unlocked patio doors, and Madeleine's fund passed the e-fits to the police in the PJ and the Leicestershire Police had them by October 2009. Scotland Yard received them in which way became involved. But um, although there was meaning in the teams, Tanner and Smith was crucial. Now, Scotland Yard released the EFIS in October 2009 and in May in the BBC Crime Watch reconstruction after it had aired. Now, the McCanns would subsequently sue for €55,000 in damages, and Jerry said, which have been donated to a charity. All right, this is it for part 4. Join me as for our final part next time as we do part 5.